Hello, this is Quinn, that's Snazzy iPhone Guy, and this is going to be the full review of the Sony Ericsson Xperia X10 Mini Pro by Sony Ericsson. Now this is going to be a pretty quick and fast-paced review, so put your listening ears on because I do have to go and return this phone in about 35 minutes. So let's go! This is the Sony Ericsson Xperia X10 Mini Pro. What it includes is headphones which are FM radio capable, a power brick, a USB charger, and then a manual. And that's about it. That's all that's included with the phone. Now, the phone will run you $499 US retail unlocked. You can find it on various online retailers for a little bit less, about $340. However, it still is pretty up there. But that is due to the fact that it is unlocked and not subsidized by your carrier. There are a few carriers around the world that will subsidize this phone for you. I don't think there's any in the US, namely T-Mobile and AT&T, because it is an HSDPA and GSM capable phone. But let's get into it and let's review the Sony Ericsson Xperia X10 Mini Pro. Now, the difference between the Mini Pro and the Mini is the slide-out Qwerty Keyboard, which we'll get to in a minute, but it is well worth your extra $100. Now, the phone itself is running Android 1.6. You know, I'm kind of disappointed by that because it feels like there's a general lagginess to the OS. And that's not because it's running Android 1.6, but that's because it's skinned heavily by Sony Ericsson's UI. It's not bad, but I don't feel like it's quite there. I feel like it could have a few improvements. And, you know, while it is a good phone and still does pretty well in performance, you know, it is a little bit laggier than you would hope. And it's not due to the processor, because the processor is, you know, it's 600 megahertz. It's not the fastest one out there, but it's not by no means a slow processor. I just feel like the OS isn't quite there because it runs games pretty well, and that is my other point, is when you can find games that work. Due to the fact that it does run Android 1.6, many of the newer games do not support the phone, and you will get errors and you will get all this unpretty, ugly stuff. So you will want to note that before you buy the phone, is that it is not on the current Android OS, and it's not even 2.0 yet, so you will find that you're not running a lot of apps that you would like. So that's definitely one thing to know. Now, if we go around the phone here a little bit, we will discover a few things. This is a micro USB port on the side, and that's where it charges. Odd spot. Sony Ericsson has always put stuff in a weird, bizarre place to charge. I would have preferred the bottom, but on the bottom you have a lanyard strap, and then you have a microphone. On the side you have the camera button, and then you have the little nub in the phone which allows you to pop off the back cover and access the battery, the SIM card slot, and the micro SD card. And then you have the volume here with the 3.5mm headphone jack on the top, which means it will fit pretty much every headphone, and then you have the sleep awake button. Now, it does come with a 2GB micro SD card, and that is necessary because it only comes with a mere 128 megabytes of internal memory. However, if 2GB isn't quite enough for you, that's fine because it is expandable to up to 16 gigabytes. Now, on the back here, you'll see the speaker grill, the Sony Ericsson and Xperia engravings, and then you'll find the 5-megapixel camera with the LED flash. Now, let me talk about the camera. I am hugely impressed with it. I'll throw in a few pictures here at the end just to show you how good they are. I'm really appalled by the quality of the Sony Ericsson Xperia X10 Mini Pros, capability to shoot photos. It does really well in low light solutions, which is pretty unusual for camera phones due to the smaller camera sensors. Now, the Xperia's, as you can pretty much tell, is a little bit bigger than most smartphones, and this results in better quality pictures. Even though it is only quote-unquote 5 megapixels, it is better than a lot of other smartphones I've tried, including the Droid X, and the Samsung Captivate. So, you know, it is a pretty remarkable camera. Now, when you get to shooting video, that's another story. It only shoots VGA at 30 frames a second. The lighting is really poor, and I just think it's a mediocre video camera. So if you're looking to video, the Sony Xperia X10 Mini Pro is definitely not for you. But if you're a point-and-shoot kind of person, you know, an amateur photographer that wants a camera on their phone, this is one of the best on the market. So the camera is 5 megapixels. It shoots in 2560 by 1920 pixels. Has an autofocus, which is really nice, and then it has the LED flash. So the camera on this phone is really superb if you're taking shots. If you're taking video, not the best. So let's get to the Qwerty Keyboard. This is without a doubt why this phone shines. It is a slide-out Qwerty Keyboard, and you will know that the hinge is absolutely incredible. That's one thing I've noted with Sony Ericsson phones is the general build quality of these phones is just superior to pretty much any other brand on the market. They're better than HTC phones. They're pretty much on par with the Apple iPhone, and they're far and above Samsung phones. So the build quality is just really solid on these devices, and you don't feel like it's going to fall apart anytime soon, which means that the hinge on this is really nice. It pops in and out really quickly and does have kind of a locking feel to it. Now, if you do know, the keyboard right here is pretty small due to the phone's small form factor. Now, I have monstrous thumbs, and it was a little bit weird to type on this phone at first, but after a while, after about the 2 weeks that I've had this phone to review, I've gotten really accustomed to it. In fact, I'm faster than I am on my iPhone, and my accuracy is far and above any other phone I've ever used. I don't know what it is about this keyboard, but I'm just faster at it than any other keyboard. It probably is the fact that they have their each individual keys, that they are a little bit bubbled, and that they are really firm to press. So you do get a really nice response on the key itself. They're not at all mushy, and you do feel like you're actually touching a button, which helps you keep up speed. Now, there are all the letters. If you want to access numbers and a few symbols, you simply hold or press this blue key and then select the desired one you want. And then for symbols, you simply click this and you'll have a list of emoticons and other symbols that aren't listed on the keyboard. It's also good for international texting, as there are international characters available. Now, one thing to note about the keyboard that I found pretty unusual is that it's really well software oriented. I feel like a lot of keyboards are like afterthoughts on a lot of smartphones nowadays, and they're just thrown in there for kicks and giggles. Not the Xperia. It's really kind of the heart and focus of this phone. It just does things that you'll know that the iPhone does. I mean, that's a bad generalization because I think it is better than the iPhone keyboard, but it really just, if you hold the shift, it only does it while you hold it. If you press it once, it does it one time, and if you double tap it, it does it multiple times. It's just a really intuitive keyboard that it just kind of works. You don't have to learn how to use it. It just does what you want it to do. And that's good because the on-screen keyboard is absolutely atrocious. Due to the small 2.55-inch LCD due to the small 2.55-inch display, it is a little bit lousy on the individual on-screen keyboard, and we'll get to that here in a minute. We'll open up a new composition. As you can see, it does take over the entire screen, and it just does kind of a lousy job. This is a review. Say hello. So I will say that with the Sony Xperia X10 Mini Pro and all Sony Ericsson phones, the T9 dictionaries are actually really good. You don't have to teach the phones a lot of words, which is pretty nice. But I felt like there was a lot of lagginess to the display, and when you're typing fast, it's really inconvenient. So that's one thing to know. However, when you do press pretty much anything keyboard oriented on the screen, you will get a vibrous style. You'll get a vibration back. So I'm trying to think of the proper terminology for that, but on the screen when you're typing, you will get a kind of feedback in that regard. However, it doesn't work on the keyboard. So let's see. The accelerometer, as with any other phone, there is an accelerometer inside the device. The accelerometer isn't quite as touchy as some of the iDevices out on the market. However, it is really pretty good. I was impressed by the overall sensitivity of the accelerometer in a lot of accelerometer-oriented games. Now, the phone itself features 2.1 Bluetooth, which I've got to say is absolutely awesome. Historically, I've never been a fan of Bluetooth because it's lousy to connect, it's not very fast, it's really low quality when you're streaming audio, and I just was not a fan of it. Now, the Sony Xperia kind of changed my mind on Bluetooth, and it may be to the fact that I've been using iPhones for the last 4 years, and iPhones are horrible with Bluetooth management. The Sony Ericsson Xperia X10 Mini Pro connected to my Pioneer in-car, in-dash stereo system without a problem. And that's really unusual because I'd have to do it every time manually on the iPhone and take forever. When I got in the car, turned the car on, it automatically connected to my phone, which I was hugely impressed with. So Bluetooth is awesome on this phone. Now, let's get to the Wi-Fi and the 3G capability. It is 3G capable. It is HSDPA capable let's see, 900, 2100, 850, 1900, and 2100 bands. So it is pretty much for any 3G network. It will work. It will work on T-Mobile, will work on AT&T. As it is an unlocked phone, it pretty much works on every carrier in the world that supports 3G and is GSM oriented. However, there is Wi-Fi on board as well if you want a little bit faster data speeds. It is 802.11b/G, so while it is not N capable, it does a pretty good job at managing Wi-Fi stuff. It isn't quite as fast taking data down as I would hope. It's definitely not as fast as my iPad and not quite as fast as my iPhone. So I did notice that there was a little bit lagginess in the ability for it to download and transmit content via Wi-Fi. But 3G speeds were pretty fast, and I'm pretty fascinated and happy with those. Now, the touchscreen itself is capacitive. I've never been a fan of resistive touchscreens and pretty much refuse to use them. I'm not sure why manufacturers still put them in devices. We just got a Samsung Sunburst in the family, and while it is a pretty nice little, very light phone, it is a resistive touchscreen, and it just is awful. So this features a capacitive touchscreen, and it's just really nice. As you will note, there are these 3 silver buttons on the bottom. These are stock with pretty much any Android phone, but you will know that they are physical hardware buttons. I've noticed a lot of a lot of Android phones and smartphones have been moving to these capacitive touchscreen, touch-resistant buttons, and I've never been a fan of those because you're typing and you bump one and you hit it. It's a lot harder to bump a button than it is to bump a touchscreen. So that's one thing to note, and I really do like the buttons. I feel like they could have been done a little bit better. When you're in the landscape orientation, this one's a little bit uncomfortable to reach, and it feels just a little bit too small, but the batteries are better than a touchscreen oriented touch resistance display. What am I saying? I don't really know. Okay, we talked about the camera, we talked about let's talk about the radio. It is stereo FM capable, but it only is capable with the inline headphones which come with the Sony Xperia X10 Mini Pro. Now the headphones themselves aren't shabby. They're not bad. They produce a decent sound. Are they great? No, but they are better than your average bundle throw-in. They're definitely better with they're definitely better than the Apple in-ear buds, and they do have ear gels with an extra set. So the Sony Ericsson headphones are pretty good, and you will need those to use the FM capabilities on the phone. But on that phone and on the headset, it also does have an inline mic and control system, so you can kind of do a few things that the iPhone is capable of. However, you're not limited to those headphones because it is a 3.5mm headphone jack, so it will support any headphone out there on the market, and it does a superb job at doing so. So that is what shines on that phone, and let's go to the browser. The browser is absolutely great. Is it an iPhone? No, but I feel like it's a lot better than most phones, and it's probably due to the fact that it's running Android. Now, it is a lot better than, the cheesy browsers that come on, phones that are an afterthought. The browser was definitely one of the main focuses on this phone, and it does a really superb job. Is it the best browser out there on the market? No, but I feel that that's probably due to the fact that the screen is 2.55 inches. You can zoom in, there is no multi-touch gestures, but that's pretty much something that's not available on most Android phones. You can go full screen and select where on the page you want to go. That's a very nifty little feature that I've pretty much fallen in love with. And then there is basic navigation here with bookmarks, refresh, list, the multiple pages, and a few other cool things like that. The battery is where things go downhill. It features I shouldn't say it features. It has a 980 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty mediocre. The processor inside here is 600 megahertz. It's a Qualcomm MSM 7227, which is not the most resource hogging processor, but it is one of the bigger ones. This is a smartphone. It's not some cheap dinky little phone that doesn't need a big battery. While the battery is removable, it feels like it was just an afterthought by Sony and was not a focus on the phone. Now, I do understand that the phone does have its small form factor due to the fact that the battery is tiny, but I feel like they could have put a little more oomph in it, because standby, I was getting just over a day. That is waking up, unplugging it, and not touching it. I barely got more than a day. And then in terms of actual usage, you get pretty much no run out of this bad boy. While it is replaceable, I don't feel like I should have to replace my battery midday. With average use, I was getting about 7 hours, and with heavy use, I was getting about 2.5 to 3 hours. So the battery life is absolutely atrocious on this. As you can see, the SIM card slot here, it's really crooked, and that's because I have my micro SIM in here. It worked without any complaints whatsoever. You do kind of have to jerry rig it and shimmy it in there perfectly, but it worked fine, and that's what I've been using with the phone. And then right here, you'll find that there is the 2 gigabyte, I thought I lost it for a minute, the 2 gigabyte micro SD card. And that does a pretty good job at maintaining memory on the device for storage and music and apps and a bunch of other stuff. However, this is expandable to 16 gigabytes. So we talked about video, we talked about everything else, we talked about the radio and the browser. It is a pretty solid phone all around. Do I think that it's worth $500? No, I don't. But that is, you know, an unlocked phone. It's not a subsidized price. You buy it and that's your phone, and you don't have to do anything with any carrier. So I feel like it is worth the subsidized price on your carrier. You know, they range about $149. So is it better than an iPhone? No, but it kind of depends what you want. If you're an avid texter,